Subway was just sold for the first time ever, and it was sold for a lot less than you might think. Once one of the most dominant fast food chains, Subway still brings in more revenue than all other fast food restaurants beside Taco Bell and McDonald's. But it's not nearly as popular or profitable as it once was. In fact, it sold for way less than McDonald's is worth despite having three-quarters of the revenue. So today, we're going to talk about how Subway got so big, what caused it to decline in the last couple of years, and then we'll talk about who Subway was sold to, for how much, and what the future of Subway is likely to be. But before we jump in, if you like learning about business, history, science, technology, or politics, I'd really hope you consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It's 100% free, and I think you're going to really like my fun, yet educational, non-clickbaity approach to making videos. Have you clicked it? Great, yep. Okay, awesome. Now that you've clicked subscribe, let's start at the beginning. In 1965, 17-year-old Fred DeLuca was looking for advice on how to pay for college, and when he asked his family friend Peter Buck, Peter suggested that he open a sandwich shop. So, Fred borrowed $1,000 from Peter to open the sandwich shop in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He originally called it Pete's Super Submarines, but 3 years later they rebranded it to Subway. By 1974, they had 16 Subways throughout Connecticut. Fred and Pete both really valued growth, and by 1981 they had 200 locations across the United States, and in 1982, only 1 year later, they increased by another 50% to 300. The main reason why Subway was able to grow so quickly was how cheap it was for a franchisee to start one. For perspective, if you want to start a Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, or Taco Bell, you're looking at spending well over $2 million in setup costs for each, and the franchise initiation fees are about $45,000. Whereas a Subway only has a total startup cost of about $500,000 and a franchise initiation fee of $15,000. So it makes sense that a lot of potential franchisees would be drawn to Subway. The stores were much less expensive to start, and sales were going through the roof at the time. By 1990, Subway had opened its 5,000th store. Remember, they only had 200 stores in 1981, 9 years earlier, which means that the total number of stores had increased by 2,400%. One way that Subway was able to increase so quickly and inexpensively was by putting locations in non-traditional places. You want to put a Subway in a gas station? Cool, you can do that. A truck stop? That's chill, whatever. A food court? No problem. Military base? Let's do it. Subway really didn't care where the location was, they just wanted more locations. Now, Subway had always marketed itself as a healthier fast food option, but in the 1990s, as consumers became much more interested in healthy eating, Subway started taking shots at its competitors. Like, check out this commercial from 1997.
You're hungry, you want a deal, so you head over to McDonald's and you get a Big Mac Extra Value Meal. Man, is it a great deal of fat, 53 grams to be exact. If great taste with less fat is what you value, come to Subway. Choose from 7 subs under 6 grams of fat. Add baked lays and a drink, and you'll have an entire meal under 8 grams. Take the Subway Challenge. Take one bite, and if you don't like our subs, you get your money back. It's the Subway Challenge at a Subway near you.
Now, I feel like it's pretty rare for brands to call out other brands in marketing like this. But it seemed to work for Subway, and they leaned more into the healthy eating aesthetic in 2000 by hyping up Jared Fogle, who had allegedly lost 200 pounds by eating Subway sandwiches. They had commercials everywhere with him holding up his old pants to show how much weight he had lost. These marketing strategies worked, and Subway saw an increase in sales and an increase in locations, and by 2002, Subway had passed McDonald's and had become the largest restaurant chain in the United States. Things kept going right for Subway because in 2008, there was this little thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the Great Recession. The Great Recession caused many consumers to become much more cost conscious, and Subway capitalized on this with its $5 footlong commercial. It looked like Subway could do no wrong, but yet, just a couple of years later, sales started falling. Slowly at first, to be fair, only 3% down in 2014, but then sales started falling faster, and Subway started shuttering thousands of stores. So what led to this fall? Well, there are 3 main reasons. The first is that Subway got too big too fast. Remember how earlier I said that they would just open stores about anywhere? Well, Subway's founder and CEO from 1965 to 2015, Fred DeLuca, was extremely focused on the number of stores the company had open as an indicator of the company's success. And since everything in Subway happened the way that Fred wanted it to, that's what the company focused on. With Subway letting just about anyone open up a franchise location anywhere, Subways opened up really close to each other, sometimes within a block or two, and the stores cannibalized each other's sales. This meant that each store became less and less profitable because 2 stores were serving what 1 store probably could or should have been serving. This led Subway to have to pull back on the number of stores it had to the point that it probably should have been at the whole time. The second reason is that in 2015, Jared Fogle, the guy who had been their lifelong ambassador with the pants, and single-handedly was responsible for boosting Subway sales by 20% in 1 year, pled guilty to doing some really bad stuff with kids, like Sound of Freedom stuff. It's pretty nasty, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but if you want to learn more about it, they made an entire documentary about it called Jared Fogle Catching a Monster. Fogle was sentenced to 16 years in jail, which, in my opinion, is probably too short. Each year after the scandal, Subway sales dropped about $200 million, from $11.5 billion to $11.3 billion to $11 billion, and by 2019, Subway had just over $10 billion in revenue. They brought in a new CEO to try to turn things around, and this CEO was famous for bringing Burger King to profitability through cost cutting, and he used the exact same playbook at Subway. Unfortunately, we can't really know if this playbook would have worked because shortly thereafter, COVID entered the chat. COVID upended all businesses, but especially hurt Subway, as unlike McDonald's, KFC, Wendy's, or most other fast food restaurants, Subways don't have drive-thrus. This lack of a drive-thru meant that many customers chose to go to other restaurants where they could drive through and therefore keep their distance a bit better. Things kept piling up for Subway as a New York Times report stated that they found no tuna DNA in Subway's tuna fish sandwiches, which is obviously not good. Allegedly, the cost cutting led to a concoction of stuff to make the tuna cheaper, which eventually just replaced the tuna entirely. In 2021, with all this negative press, Subway was desperate to change their image to be perceived as a healthy brand again. This isn't the 1990s anymore, and they aren't the only healthy shop in town. Every major fast food place now has healthy options on their menus. Even McDonald's, which Subway took potshots at back in the 90s, has a variety of grilled chicken sandwiches and grilled chicken wraps. So, to revitalize their image, they hired the likes of Steph Curry for their Eat Fresh, Refresh campaign, and invested in new artisan breads, better soups, upgraded dressings, and on top of that, they made a list of standardized sandwiches that you could just pick from instead of having to make your own each time you came in. This standardized list made it so that you could decrease customer wait times and increase throughput. They also spent $80 million on fresh meat slicers for each location so that customers could see that their meat wasn't coming from some pre-packaged factory. This campaign seems to have worked pretty well, and same-store sales went up 9.8% in the first half of 2023. The trailing 12 months of revenue is around $16 billion. Over their resurgence of the last year, there have been rumors that the founders' families were looking to sell the business. Remember, for all these years as Subway has gotten so huge, it's been a private company. It seems like Fred and Pete's families want to cash in and don't want to have to deal with all the headaches of running such a massive business. So on August 24th of 2023, it was announced that Subway would be sold to Roark Capital. Now you might be wondering, as I was, who on earth is Roark Capital? Well, even though you don't know them by name, they own a lot of companies in the food space that you probably do know. They own places like Auntie Anne's, Cinnabon, Carl's Jr., Hardee's, Dunkin' Donuts, Jimmy John's, Two Men in a Truck, Orange Theory, and in the past, they've owned companies like Anytime Fitness, Arby's, Baskin-Robbins, Jamba Juice, Sonic, The Cheesecake Factory, and my beloved Culver's. I love Culver's. Anyway, and now they own Subway too. So as you can tell, Roark Capital has a lot of experience in the fast food game. So I think it's safe to say that when they bought Subway this week for around $9.55 billion, they think they can make it run way better and help return it to its glory of one of the top fast food places. Also, just a side note here, in order for the founders' families to get the full $9.55 billion, Subway needs to hit certain milestones in the coming years. If they don't, the deal is only worth $8.95 billion. The DeLuca and Buck families were hoping to get more in the $10 billion range for Subway because of its strong branding and international growth, but Roark didn't really want to pay that much because they said that the US market was already really saturated, and they're right. And that brings us to answering the last question. What does the future hold for Subway? Although no one really knows for sure, my bet is that the new management will continue to invest in upscaling the quality of the food and the experience of eating at Subway. Most fast food places have been making their restaurants into nicer, more modern stores. Subway right now is kind of stuck in the late 2000s and early 2010s as far as its appearance goes. So I think it's very possible that they will go the route of Taco Bell and McDonald's and invest in modernizing their appearance and trying to move toward a more modern aesthetic. There is still a really large group of modern consumers who want healthy, fast, casual food. And so if Subway is able to regain its presence as a healthy, real food place, they could still see an increase in profits there. Think about how Chipotle and Cafe Rio are so well regarded because everyone can see how fresh the food is. It's cooked right in front of them. I think Subway will succeed the most if they run with that. Other areas where they could improve are integrating digital sales, adding products that aren't sandwiches, maybe incorporating wraps, that could be pretty easy, and curbside pickup. Since their places don't have drive-thrus, this could be a good middle ground for the fast-paced consumer. And finally, improving the franchisee relationship. This last one would be really good because historically, Subway has had a quite bad relationship with its franchisees. But all of these would just be band-aids if the core product of fresh, healthy food isn't good. So what do you think? How do you think Subway will fare over the next couple of years? What would you do to help bring them back to their glory days? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.